This is TWiP. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. I have the honor of sitting down with Mr. James Anthony. He's one of those photographers that a lot of us aspire to be. He's kind of on our wish list, our dream board of, if I could do this, professionally, this is kind of what that would look like. James is a photographer. He's crushing it. Look at his Instagram. Well, look for the link in the profile or in the post. You'll see the Instagram. But look at his Instagram. Look at his website. This guy is crushing it in Los Angeles. He's creating iconic photography down there of all sorts of things, celebrities included. He's got a style that many of us would love to be able to emulate, but he's here to talk about all that stuff and his involvement with a little company called Adobe. So we're going to talk about all that. James Anthony, welcome to the show, man. How's it going?
Thank you. Look, everything is good. Good to speak to another creative, another shooter out here. But yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm always excited to talk about it.
You and I spoke about a week ago, and when we had that conversation, you were right on the heels, literally running in the house from the Oscars, right? Is that you had just like literally sat down in Zoom coming from an Oscar party or from something Oscar related? Before we dive into your background, let's start there. Let's do, how they, in films, since you're in Tinsel-town down there, in films, they'll often start a movie halfway through the movie and then go back to the beginning. Let's start there. What was that evening like as a photographer shooting the Oscars and having that level of access?
Well, a little bit of surreal, but then a little bit of like, yeah, I should be here. I'll put in the time. So it's always that dance where it's like, what? This is crazy. And then it's like, no, you've been putting in blood, sweat, and tears over years. So this is where you should be. So it's funny when those moments kind of take over. But just working with the talent that I was working with, Regina King, now everything is out there, but posting the photos of Regina King and awesome, talented actress and director, Oscar award-winning actress. And then I'm shooting her in her suite. And then Aldous Hodge, who is also an equally talented actor and also one of the stars of her film, One Night in Miami, he comes in unexpectedly to me, but then he jumps in some of the shots and we're able to capture some moments between Regina and him. But just working with a talent like hers and being also in the presence of the brand that, of the dress that she was wearing. So you had a Louis Vuitton rep there. You had, you're in correspondence virtually with Vogue because they're waiting for the first drop of the images. So a little bit of pressure, just knowing that you have to go in there, execute, have these images ready as soon, these images had to be ready, edited within 45 minutes of me shooting, which is one of those things where preparation, is key. But it was definitely something that could not have been done without a team. The conversation may be, the photographer or there's no way I would have been able to execute all of that without a team. So my two assistants, my retoucher on staff who was in Miami, and she's on Zoom. So it took the coordination. You want everything to run smoothly. So all that to be said is everyone was happy. The brand was like, James, it was great working with you and your management, crowd management. Thank you for keeping me sane. But it was just one of those things where it's like, you know what, you were prepared for this and all the hard work is paying off. Yeah. And the funny thing is, so I'm shooting and I can't remember. I think we talked about this last week, but I'm shooting Regina. The images go live, they're posted everywhere. And then as I'm at the celebratory dinner with my wife, as far as because we decided to stay in this same hotel that Regina was in. So after I finished shooting her, we just go downstairs and go to our room. And so we went to the rooftop restaurant that they had, and we're eating dinner. Then I get a call from Law Roach, who is another world-renowned wardrobe stylist for Zendaya and Celine Dion and everyone else. And he gives me a call. He's like, "Hey, James, I've been trying to reach you. I saw you shot Regina. I would love if you could shoot Aldous Hodge tonight in his room." And I'm like, "Oh, well, that's crazy. I just shot Aldous. He came by to Regina's room." He said, "Yeah, but we need images for his, like his look." And I'm like, "All right, cool. Like when?" He's like, "Now." So I'm like, "What?" So we just ordered our entree wasn't even at the table yet. We had to have it packed up. And, my wife was like, "Go ahead and do your thing. Like, this is a moment you get." So we pack up the dinner, and then, I literally packed up my equipment and headed over to another hotel that was downtown, and I shot Aldous in his room. We're trying to find it's nighttime at this point, and he had just left the Oscars, because when I'm packing up my equipment, I'm watching Aldous. I'm like, well, the Oscars is live and he's right there. So he's not at his room yet. So I get to the hotel. He arrives about 30 minutes later. I shot him against the balcony window and in his bathroom, and we made it work. And
wow.
That was another moment right there. And then fast forward to 2 days ago, I'm having the opportunity to shoot another Oscar winner, John Batiste, right after he performs at American Idol. And it was just like, my first dream was always to be an actor, but to be around all these Oscar winners and to work Oscar weekend, it was just surreal. It was really surreal, but also affirming that I'm in the career field of entertainment that I always felt, I always thought. It was an amazing feeling. I'd say the past 10 days have been amazing.
Yeah, and it's got to be validating, and I wonder, take us into the room with Regina. And I saw that dress, by the way. That was beat. So,
Crazy.
Yeah, that was a nice dress. But with that, you got, of course, your crew, and you guys are working together. But then, like you said, you've got Louis Vuitton in there, and all these major brands or their representatives in there who have their own agendas and have a right to have their own agendas. And then you've got this megastar in there as well, who I'm sure has some say over what the images look like. How do you, as the guy with the camera, that's ultimately the responsible person or the fall guy if something doesn't happen, how do you wrangle all that and make sure everybody feels like they're getting what they want and deliver the images, that quickly so people can see them online and then call you up for another shoot? How does all that happen?
Yeah. It's one of those things where going into this, you knew that you had to execute for Vogue magazine. You had to execute for Regina King and her styling team, Wayman and Micah. Shouts out to them, because none of this would have happened if they didn't tap me on the shoulder for the Emmys in September. So forever grateful for those two. And then you had images that were going to go to Vogue social, and you had images that were going to go to Louis Vuitton, and also images that were going to go to the Hollywood Reporter. So walking in, you knew you had a shot list of, all right, you need something kind of natural for this. You need something fashion, just posy for this. And you needed something you're going in there knowing where all of these photos were going to be placed. So it's kind of like, once I got to the room beforehand, I scout the location, and I'm like, all right, well, by the piano is one good spot. In front of this doorway is another moment. In front of this window is another moment. And then you just, and I remember hearing the rep from Louis Vuitton. She was like, "Oh, I love it how organized you are." And I'm like, how else can you be? In a moment like this, like, how else are you supposed to be? So that was a validating little moment. But the fact that everything happened the way it was supposed to, it just felt really good knowing that you can rise to the occasion, because it is a high, because they kept stressing. They're like, "James, as soon as this photo is done, we're going to need it within 35 minutes of you shooting it." And, that could cause someone's head to explode, knowing that you have that pressure to make sure that the dress looks right and Regina looks good and everything is up to par. So the fact that everything, came together, it's just like, yes, and it just makes you want to say, yo, I got a great team. I want to make sure that they stay rocking with me, for all the other gigs. And that's kind of been the situation, just making sure that, I always try to mind my composure, I'm
keep the heart rate low, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I got high blood pressure, so I just try to, naturally just kind of keep everything composed. But it is something I feel like that is one of my superpowers. Is some people say, wow, you don't really get bothered, and a lot of times I'm always the person that's like, yo, why stress over things you can't control? The things you can't control. Make sure they're going to go the way that you want them to, so you won't have to, your brain won't explode. And then when it does go astray from the intended plan, I'm really big on problem solving. I always tell people one of the biggest practices or traits of a successful entrepreneur is being able to problem solve, because there's always going to be that situation where something doesn't happen the way it's supposed to, or something, anything. How well can you pivot in that moment always determines how you'll be able to move through your field. So
that's the professional, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's the professional. And we were talking about a little bit before we started recording. And I want you to tell that story about the stairs, but before, one of the things that separates an amateur from a professional is like exactly what you said. The professional can adapt and overcome. Right, where an amateur will fold and make excuses for folding, and then the other thing for being a professional is to be able to produce a consistent work product over time under a variety of situations. One of those situations you hit, right? Literally those stairs before the Batiste shoot. Tell us about that. How did that go down and what happened?
Well, what happened before the Batiste shoot?
Yeah, well, with the whole, hurt yourself and the stairs, and then you still went out and got the shit.
Yeah, how about that? Shortly after the Oscars, maybe 3 or 4 days, maybe 4 or 5. But I had a cover. Actually, can I say that yet? Let's say I'll say I had a shoot with Amber Riley. Who was also equally like an amazing powerhouse singer. Most people are familiar with her from Glee, but she's also a friend of mine, and had a shoot with her. And we're shooting at this location in the hills, and we're coming up on our last look. I think we had shot 6 looks up into that point, maybe 5. And there's we're shooting at a house on the hills. So if anyone is familiar with LA and any house on the hills, they're always steep. And they had a steep set of steps. So I'm like, okay, we're coming up on 5 p.m. We got to be out this house. Let me hurry up and get down these steps. As I'm hurrying up to get down these steps, I lost a footing on my right foot. And next thing you know, I'm
gravity
sliding down these steps. And as I'm falling, everything is slow motion, but so fast at the same time. I'm falling and I'm like, no, there's no bracing yourself. You're going down, James. And as I'm falling, it's like, my wrist goes into the step, the lens cracks, my wrist goes back, my neck. So as I fall, usually, I'm in shape and I'm like, usually I get up. That fall, there was no getting up. It was once I was at the bottom of those steps, I had to process what just happened. I'm like, I just fell down a flight of concrete steps that were hella steep. And I looked at my lens. I'm like, this is broke. My assistant and the videographer had seen the whole thing. And he tell my assistant, Reggie, says, from the angle he was at, he saw my head go. He saw my head and then he heard a yell. And then he couldn't see me anymore. And then he was like, oh, James is falling. So he ran down the steps. They're like, are you okay? And I'm like, little hurt, but we're all good. my lens, both my lens, because I had my lens on the camera and I had an extra lens in my hand.
Oh,
Both my lenses done. The speed light on top of the camera done. So we still had one more look to shoot, and it was like a kind of like a Rapunzel look where she was in this window and I was going to shoot from the street up. So the videographer's like, "Don't worry, James, I got a 70-20 lens that can work." So I'm like, "All right." I use his lens, I shoot the last image, and then I hobble back up to the crew in the house, and I'm like, "We got this shoot, but my equipment is done." So then fast forward to Jean-Baptiste a few days after that. I hadn't got my equipment replaced, and the creative director, Jamel McWilliams, for So Many People, John Legend, Janelle Monáe, and so Lizzo, he's like, "Hey, Jean-Baptiste just got finished. Well, he's taping the American Idol today. I would love if we can get a red carpet look as far as what he's wearing." And I'm like, "I don't have any equipment, but I'll make it work." So the same assistant, shouts out to Reggie Van Green on Instagram, who helped me from my fall a few days prior. I'm like, "Reggie, can I borrow your lens and your camera for a shoot tonight?" He was like, "Yeah, sure, we'll make it happen." So I Ubered to CBS Studios, or that was a lot that we were at for American Idol. I Ubered there. I have Reggie drop off the camera, like perfect timing. As I'm about to hop in the car with Jean-Baptiste and Jamel McWilliams, Reggie's pulling up. I run over there, get the camera. We head over to John's hotel, and we shoot him like literally rushing because the sun is setting. And my flash, I don't have anymore because it's broke. So I'm like, if we shoot this, it has to be so fast because the sun was about to be done. So I said, "All right, well, I'll shoot it. If it's too dark, I'll brighten it up in Lightroom." And it's everything worked out, man. It was just one of those moments. Just like I always kind of have the feeling like everything is always going to work out for me. I always tell myself that, like, "James, don't worry. Everything is going to work out for you," because that's in my mind, when I go into situations of stress, or maybe there may be a situation where it may be a challenge, I always tell myself, I'm like, "James, you are favored. Everything is going to work out. No matter if you don't see the outcome yet, everything is going to work out." So I literally was saying that as I was in the Uber, in the Lyft, headed to them. I said, "Everything is going to work out." So the sun setting, I'm like, "Oh man, these shots are going to be murky." I was like, "No, everything is going to work out." And everything worked out. So I'm grateful for the experience. I was able to have some fun creatively with Jean-Baptiste. And who knows what other doors that'll open.
Yeah, a lot, I'm sure. Yeah, when you're describing all that, the soundtrack I have playing in my head was Mission Impossible music.
That's what it felt like.
With the camera handoff and the Uber and the celebrity, all that stuff.
Like I said, if I wasn't in shape, I would have been in more pain than I was. So when I'm doing these things, it almost makes it, I'm almost grateful that I had been an athlete my whole life, because it's in my mind, I'm always like, "Yo, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint." So when I'm tired or when I got to get up, I'm like, literally when I'm doing certain things, when I'm picking up heavy equipment, I'm like, "Squat, use your legs, not your back." When I'm picking up the backdrop stands and it's heavy, I'm like, "You didn't go to the gym today, so this is your workout." So I'm always moving as a photographer in my head as an athlete. And I feel like it definitely makes me hone in on the experience and really buckle down on like execution.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I want to talk a little about one of the reasons we're doing this interview is Adobe related. I know you are involved with them with this, a project called Life Reflected, and you're an ambassador with Adobe. I want to talk about that a little bit and how you got involved with Adobe with that, and what that whole project is about, and what it's the ultimate goal for it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy because, like, these stories that I've been sharing with you, this is my life reflected. And the whole idea behind Adobe, well, Lightroom specifically, their life reflected just global album is wanting to create an album where people that either are familiar with Lightroom or not they can share their experiences of their life reflected or what it means to them in this global album where we can all realize how much alike we are. Just because there's been a lot of division, especially within the States, but and not saying that there isn't division other places in the world, because we all know that there is, but it was a way to unite and unify a collective in the form of storytelling, in the form of sharing your art. And Life Reflected, where we have these prompts that we want pretty much shooters out there to kind of all jump in and share their life reflected, share their childhood reflected, what that means to you, share growth reflected, share change reflected, and what that means to the eyes of the people behind the camera. And it's been really cool, again, just to share the experience and see what other people's interpretation of change reflected is, or what growth reflected is in their eyes or in their parts of the world. I have followers in South Africa and Japan that are sending me DMs of what it means to them as far as change reflected or life reflected. And it's just been really cool, man. Being able to connect with other shooters, other like-minded creatives, on a platform. So, and I'll honestly say that's something that I didn't necessarily expect when the partnership began with Lightroom. I didn't expect to kind of foster these creative relationships, which is actually making me more anxious to get out and travel again to some of these places, because Lightroom has kind of created a bridge of communication with various artists. And it's that part has been really cool. But then also to have the week or the past 10 days that I've had, I've kind of been in my head like, yo, this is my life reflected, like for real. And that part has been cool. But then also to be in these moments of shooting Regina King and having to pull up Lightroom, not because I'm a partner or an ambassador, let me just pull this up. Like, no, I genuinely use this software throughout my workflow. So it's like, it's just been a full circle moment this season in my life. And I am truly grateful for every connection that's been made up until this point. I never let any moment go unnoticed. Some people were like, oh, aren't you used to this by now? It's like, yeah, I am used to it, but it doesn't get old. My mother's always like, well, that's good, Anthony. You should hold on to that. And I genuinely do. It's not even something that I'm trying to put on. It's I'm still the kid again who was shooting in his college dorm room for $25. And now I'm out here shooting people that I've looked up to my whole life. So it's if anything, it was a reminder to say, hey, you decided to bet on yourself, and these are the fruits of the labor. So I'm just grateful.
That's right. Yeah, and the Life Reflected project. Within that there's this concept of prompts. Like what is the prompt, and tell me how all that mechanism works.
Yeah, the prompts pretty much those prompts that I had stated earlier. When you have the change reflected, the growth reflected, those are the prompts where we say, hey, well, this week we're going to focus on growth reflected. What does growth reflected mean to you? And what does change reflected mean to you? So, for example, for my prompt that I share for change reflected, I had photos that I had taken last year during the pancetta, the panorama, the panini, other words that we try not to use.
That thing.
Yeah, look, if it
shall not be mentioned.
Right. But no, but in all seriousness of the pandemic last year, especially when LA was shut down, it was me and 3 other shooters, photographers. We went out in the streets of downtown Los Angeles and captured each other in the streets where there was no traffic. It seemed like the set of Walking Dead, where, there are no cars moving there, there's no people in the streets because we were all on lockdown. But as documentarians, we felt like the need to go out there and capture these moments. So to capture one another in the middle of a street that is normally busy and filled with cars, and there be none, that was my change reflected, like what a change 2020 was for the whole entire world. And I feel like that was the most unique experiences. It was a shared experience amongst the whole world. It wasn't just United States. It was over the whole world, essentially. And
That's right.
that was the change reflected, that it was cool to be a photographer, capturing moments like that. I remember going on the highway and pulling over, and this is a 4-lane highway where you could never pull over and walk across it like it was a pedestrian walkway, but you could at that moment. I wouldn't recommend it, but it was one of those things where I was like, I have to document this. This is a change. This is the ultimate change reflected, where typically you would see something like this on a movie set, but this was real life, and it was something that all of us were going through, especially in a metropolis like downtown Los Angeles. So, and then growth reflected. What does growth reflected mean to you? For me, that prompt was being able to relish in the moments of being a milestone photographer for some of my clients, because some people are like, oh, do you only shoot celebrities? No, I shoot everyone, and some of the pleasures of shooting some clients I've had over the years is to watch them grow as a family, from the engagement photos to the wedding photos to the pregnancy photos. And then after they have their first child, you're shooting the 2 that becomes 3 and the 3 that becomes 4 on their second child. And you're looking over the photos over the years, and it's like, wow, look at the growth in this. So for me, that was something that embodied growth reflected as a photographer, which was cool to share with my following. So the prompts really, what those things, the change reflected, the growth reflected, the life reflected, what that means to the photographers out there, with you click on that hashtag and you're able to see works from all over. I think that is what unifies us, when it's like, we may be in different countries, but there is something that keeps us all tied in, as human beings. I think that's what humanizes us all. So it was really cool. It has been a cool experience. Yeah.
With the pandemic, like you said, the whole world was affected through it. It was almost like the whole planet had a cold, or still has a cold. We're still, the whole planet's still staying home from work because it doesn't feel well, right? So hopefully we'll be going back to work soon. But how do you think the events over the past year, 18 months or so, has impacted you as a photographer and your work, if anything? Have you felt something that you're forever changed because of what went down over the past 18 months?
Forever changed in a sense that it's been an eye-opening experience, where it's like, being able to pivot on just being able to pivot career-wise, when the photo stopped, it's like, all right, well, what could I do to book myself creatively, just to stay active, because literally work stopped, production-wise. You couldn't be on a set. You couldn't hold photo shoots in the very beginning. So those were the times where I would take to the streets with my tripod and my camera and shoot myself and kind of create James Shoots and Draws, really kind of dive into that, which is kind of like the stop motion videos I created. And then by the end of the year, I was getting booked by Usher and Regina King's team to kind of create a red carpet moment, because there weren't the traditional red carpet moments. So being able to work with someone like Regina King over 5 award shows, and kind of create these red carpet experiences as a photographer, all came from me booking myself during the pandemic and staying creative and putting that content out on social media. That's what made them, seek me out. And that was, if nothing else, that was a moment of validation where it's like, because you decided not to close up, but yet kind of open up and get out there and still create, it put your work on a platform where people, they might have been in their homes like, oh, well, I'm just thinking in their mind, like, we're stylists. We want to create a moment on a red carpet for an award show that is no longer normal. So how can we do that? And then they're scrolling. They're like, oh, look at what James just did. Let's tap him on the shoulder and see how we can create magic. And I remember, they had hit me up. They said, hey, we want to shoot this a month in advance. Because I told them I would need at least a week to kind of make this James Shoots and Draws moment for the Emmys 2020 work. They came by the apartment. They said, okay, this will work. We'll all be masked up for safety, no more than 6 people. And we made it work. And from that, led to the next award show, then the next award show, which led to partnerships. So the Oscars was truly the pinnacle of what happened at the Emmys. And the funny thing is the Emmys went off. It went off around the world. I had publications and shows from all over the world in my DMs saying, hey, can we run this on our show tonight? Hey, can we publish this photo in our magazine? So it started with a bang and ended with a bang with the Oscars. So it was the sweetest award season sandwich you could ask for.
That's great.
And being able to foster a relationship with such a legend is, what else could you ask for?
No, for sure. Do you, looking back on that, all that and the different milestones that led you up to even today, where we're chatting and kind of reviewing all this stuff, do you think that would have happened or gone down that way, or would have gone a different way had, say, the pandemic not happened? Like the self-assignments that you gave yourself, and that led to people seeing that work and saying, yes, I want that guy for my thing, and then they called you, and then they tell 2 friends, and they tell 2. If that hadn't gone down, the world hadn't gotten a cold, do you think we'd be having this conversation, or would we be in a different tangent? How do you feel about that?
Honestly speaking, we would be having this conversation. It may not have been specifically about the Oscars, specifically with Regina King, but it would have been about something, because when I posted the John Batiste work, I had a couple of people in my DM. They're like, when do you sleep? And I chuckled to myself. I was like, the funny thing is, I went to sleep at 5 a.m. after I shot John Batiste, because I was up editing the James Shoots and Draws little video that I had posted. And it's one of those things like, hey, I'm a big advocate on rest and, sufficient sleep and all that. But I'm also a big advocate of like, hey, sleep later. Let's get to this work. So I am a work monster. I do find balance. I definitely know how to clock out and enjoy life and get rest. And being an athlete, I know the importance of rest. So I don't want to say, oh, sleep later, sleep when you're dead. No, rest is important. But I do know I take pride, and I guess this is the athlete in me. I always say I will outwork you, and I promise you that. Just because I feel like it takes that consistency and that persistence and that dedication. That's what kind of sets you apart. There has to be something about you that sets you apart from the rest. And I feel like my work ethic is an attribute that I take pride in, but also, even if it wasn't the Oscars and Regina King, it would have been something else, just because I feel like I have to find an opportunity to keep myself busy creatively. And because of the pandemic, I had more time to focus on one thing. But if it wasn't that, it would have been something else. So we would have for sure been talking. It might have been a different content per se, but it would have been something.
Yeah, like they say, no matter where you go, there you are, right? So you regardless of the situation, you're still going to be James Anthony, and you're going to be doing something amazing, regardless of what the world throws at you, right? So.
I'm just thinking about, it reminds me of the pandemic, like when at the very beginning of the pandemic, I was baking from scratch, making marshmallows, making blueberry pies and apple pies and all this stuff. So, and I sweet tooth. So a lot of the stores were shut down. And I'm like, hey, if it's not one thing, it'll be something else. So I made sure to get to my suites and make. Don't worry about me, man. I have if anyone follows me on social media, they know I have something called Fat Boy Chronicles, and no matter what, I always make my way to the suites. So I always make my way to the creative outlets. But yeah, you always got to make a way.
You got it. You know, you gotta have the sweet and the sour.
Right.
You know, I wanted to wrap this up, James, with just kind of going back a little bit and talking about because I'm fascinated by the actual on the scene action and what goes down and that frenetic. Because I'm an ex-military photographer, and it's like there's a lot of stuff that there's no margin for error, right? And you got to get the shot, and you got to handle whatever is thrown at you. But in that situation, like as a military photographer or a combat photojournalist, you don't have a team working with you, right? They're out there and you're responsible for getting the shot and, doing all this stuff. I want to know about that team. Like you assembled what sounds like an Avengers level team of people that are helping you and that are augmenting the things that you do to allow you to, produce a superior work product for these brands like Vogue and Louis Vuitton. What was the process of assembling that team? Like, how do you, if people are watching this and they're like, yeah, I need a team. How do they do it? What's the process?
The team was assembled based off of energy and work, not even work relationship, based off of rapport, personal, rapport. So everyone was genuinely my friend. And I feel, some people may be indifferent about hiring your friends, but I hired my friends who were also professionals. So, and also not too big to feel like I'm not going to assist you. My assistants were directors and photographers, professional in their own right. One of my assistants, Brian Allen, he's a director of music videos and projects of that. I've assisted him before, in shooting BTS images. So it's kind of like, hey, if we're going to jump in this together, like let's all grow together. And the irony is, during the pandemic, I shot this is a little sidebar anecdote, but I'll just throw it in there. I shot a red carpet moment for Jay Ellis of Insecure for the Billboard Music Awards. I posted that video. Then I had Dick Clark Productions reach out to me and say, hey, we love what you created for this. Could you do something for the American Music Awards where you create 3 reels for the AMAs? And I'm like, sure, of course. So I already had Dick Clark Productions following me. So for this Regina King experience for the Oscars, I say, hey, Brian, he was there to assist me. But while we're working, I tap him on the shoulder. I'm like, hey, bro, do you mind capturing some video on your iPhone just to, encapsulate this moment? And he's like, sure, I got you. And then probably a few days after, I'm like, hey, that video footage that you captured, can you throw something together for a reel as a behind the scenes experience? And he's like, sure, I got you. He sends it to me. We get the color right. And I'm like, bro, this is fire. Like, I'm about to post it now. I post it. I tag him. And then he hits me up the next day. He said, Dick Clark Productions followed me and then DM'd me and said, we love the video content you produced for this. We would like to work together in the future. And I'm like, see, because I hired another dope homie who created some content for me, assisting me, it then led to him fostering a relationship with Dick Clark Productions. And now they'll probably hire him for another cool experience within the next year. So it was just, again, another full circle moment where, you make sure the people around you are dope. Everyone stays working. And I told him, I said, hey, if they hire you and you need an assistant, hit me up. And he's like, bro, you already know I got you. So I like to keep people in my circle that are my friends, where you want to see all your people win. And I kind of think of, I'm a hip hop kid. I think about Diddy, Mary J. Blige and Jay-Z, DJ Khaled, all these people that kind of came up together. And when they go to their Rock Nation brunch or whatever, dinner they have, and they're all at this estate table and they're looking down and they're like, yo, I remember coming up with you. I remember coming up with you. How Diddy can look at Mary J. Blige and be like, yo, you remember when we started together? That's essentially the team that I want to form, where it's like, yo, 10 years from now, I want to be like, yo, you remember that Oscar year and all that? And you remember Dick Clark and you remember this? And I want to form a family, a creative family where years down the line, we can all look up and relish in the journey that we were all on and that led us to where we will be during that moment. So I think assembling a team of other artists and creative individuals and professionals that can complement your brand and your business is always key. So, and that would have never happened if the energy and the rapport wasn't there, because I'm huge on energy. All it takes is one experience for me to be off-put by the energy you're given. I don't have to work with you ever again. But it's I feel like light attracts light, and the people are around me, they're individuals filled with light. And I feel like that's what helps keep me afloat and propels me to the next level. And I hope I can offer that to them as well. So yeah,
I love that.
There's strength in numbers. And when the numbers are strong and fortified with light and good energy, I'm real big on that.
Yeah, and I wanted to wrap up with this because I was having a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine. We were talking about there's a million reasons. Let's just focus on the United States. There's a million reasons to be negative, especially as a Black American, right? There's a million reasons to be negative and just be sullen and to look at things as glasses half empty and just be that guy, right? It's easy, and you have an excuse, right? You have you have justification to be pissed off. So how do you, as a creative professional, the attitude that a couple of conversations that we've had, I leave these conversations inspired and excited and full of energy of what's possible for basically I leave the conversations with a glass is full kind of mentality. How do you maintain that? How do you maintain just sort of in the face of all this negativity that's surrounding you, even during the pandemic? LA was ground zero for a minute there, right? With a lot of stuff going down in that town, from the pandemic to protests to rallies of whatever side. All that stuff was going down simultaneously. How do you stay positive during all that and still create a superior work product and put out self projects that are getting the eyeballs of major brands and all that? What's the secret to that?
I think the secret to it is optimism. People take it lightly. I'm like, oh, you're so optimistic. I'm like, no, it's real. You have to believe that you can forge anything you want if you put forth that, put that energy out there. And I speak big on energy. I speak big on vibes, kind of just like the law of attraction. It's very, very much real. Yes. And I feel like the further along in the journey in my career that I get, the stronger I become in realizing that I can legitimately do anything that I put forward, like where I put that energy. Like my thing now is I plan on directing an Oscar-winning animated short film. And the networks that I'm fostering along the way is going to make it easier to kind of make that happen, because the films that usually win, they have backing by people in the industry. And me as a shooter, as a photographer, I've organically been fostering these relationships with some amazing individuals where it's like, yo, if I need to tap someone on the shoulder, it's seemingly like even more possible now. So I really feel like having an optimistic outlook on life and I had said this earlier, you have to tell yourself like, yo, you are favored. The people that usually feel like, oh, this isn't for are feeling that way because they're kind of living in that self-doubt pool. And granted, we all go through it. We all go through imposter syndrome at some point, feeling like, me, am I really, worthy of this opportunity? I've had those moments as well, but I'm like, no, I'm here. They keep calling me because they like something that I'm doing. So you kind of really have to walk in that confidence, knowing that you are capable of the things that you want. And I feel like the law of attraction, again, one of the books that I'm pretty sure a lot of people have read, The Alchemist. One of my biggest take, and I had always been suggested to read that book. And it's kind of one of those things that I always kind of, oh yeah, I'll read it one day. Mm-hmm. When I finally read it, I'm like, man, why did I wait so long to read this book? Yeah. I've read it 3 times since, but the overarching message in that, my takeaway for that was, the universe will give you all that you want. Like, the universe will conspire to give you all that you want and desire. You just have to walk in that path, and you have to walk wholeheartedly in it, knowing that it's going to happen. And I had already been doing it up until that point by the time I read the book, but it was just validation. Like, you've been going about this journey the way that you should have. So every day, like I told my wife, I said, it's almost scary now, because if an idea comes in my head, I'm just like, whoa, this is going to happen. This is going to happen, because I know that anything is possible if I just lay out the blueprint. Because so many of us say, oh man, I wish this opportunity happens, or how dope would it be? And now it's like, no, I don't think how, like I wish. I'm just like, I want this to happen. What are the steps that need to occur for this to happen? So it's like, if you blueprint point A to point Z, anything can happen. Just figure out, like, if you say you want to be a millionaire, it is possible for you to become a millionaire. Just figure out the steps to do that. And I think, your confidence gains from all of your previous successes. So all of my successes up until this point, my confidence is like, okay, you want to make that happen? Like, I want to shoot Oprah. It's going to happen. Even if it's a one-shot thing, it's going to happen because I want it to happen. And I'm going to figure out a way to get there. So every opportunity up until this point has been like a leap pad. And I'm enjoying jumping from lily pad to lily pad at this point. So yeah, man, you just have to really walk in. What's yours will be yours. You just have to wholeheartedly believe that.
I love that. I love that. Man, thank you for saying that, because that is no truer words were spoken. To have a focus, and then like you said, make a plan to achieve whatever that goal is that you have in your mind. I think the other side of that is a more practical side, is the decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis, and the opportunities that present themselves that you accept. If you run them through the filter of, does this get me closer to my goal or take me farther away from my goal? It makes that decision, whether the opportunity, somebody may call you up to say, hey, James, we want you to come down and shoot the Olympics over here, but that's going to take you away from shooting something over there, which puts you closer to Oprah. It's an easy choice at that point, right? So, yeah.
I'm going to throw this in there real quick. I remember when I was in Atlanta and I kept getting asked to shoot reality stars, because in Atlanta, that's like the mecca of Black reality TV.
Yeah. Yep.
No judgment, but I don't enjoy watching reality. It's just not my thing. So I remember I said, in my career, I want to get to the point where I'm working with A-list stars. Like, I grew up loving Julia Roberts and Meryl Streep and all these people. And I remember there was a point when I was in Atlanta, I told someone, it was an editor-in-chief of a magazine. He was like, hey, would you mind shooting this person for this magazine? And I remember I had to Google them. And I was like, the fact that I had to Google the person, and I was like, I'm going to pass. And I passed because it wasn't paid. So I had to make sure that my energy that I was putting into this project, it was beneficial to both parties. And if you're hitting me up to shoot someone and it's not paid, you're winning because you're getting what you wanted, meaning the photographer of your choice to shoot for the cover of this magazine. But what am I getting out of it? Am I getting an opportunity that I feel will propel me in the direction that I'm trying to go? And I felt like, no, because if I had to Google that person, I just didn't feel, and I already didn't care for reality TV. So I passed on the opportunity. And in my mind, I said, I want to shoot, the Julia Roberts. I want to shoot your Angela Bassett's and all that, these A-list. And again, the allure of that to me was I've always wanted to be an actor. So as a photographer, I wanted to shoot the people that I wanted to become. So I'm like, all right. So I passed on that opportunity, decided to move out to LA, and slowly but surely, where I wanted to be is literally where I am. And I'm like, you have to walk in the path of, where you want to be. And I knew that focusing on a shoot that wasn't paid to do something that I didn't really care to, it would have been a waste of my time because that wasn't in the direction of the blueprint that I was creating. So, that was a detour from the direction that I was laying out these lily pads. So I said, I can't really focus on that right now. I'm at this age, time is of the essence. I'm not getting any younger, so I'm a pass. And again, if nothing else, the past 10 days has been such an eye-opening, validating experience. So yeah.
I love that. I think you might have a topic for one of your upcoming illustrated animation things with the lily pads and moving from one to
I'll shout it out. That's a good one.
Okay, cool. All right, well, let's leave it right there, man. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you chatting. Like I said, it's always inspirational and exciting chatting with you. And I love to see, people like yourself that are driven like yourself doing amazing things. I feel like you were, if you look at those steps that you had that accident on, you are at step one of a very winding, upwardly going staircase. You're not falling, but you are ascending it, and it's exciting to see you at this sort of T-1 moment where you're about to kind of get bigger. So congratulations on everything, man. It's exciting to see. And if people want to connect with you, they want to see what you're working on, obviously your Instagram, website, all that, where would you like people to point themselves, and including the Adobe project that you're working on?
Yeah, like if you go to my Instagram right now, I am James Anthony, and you look at one of my my very first highlight reel at the top, it's dedicated to Lightroom. So if you want to check back on the previous prompts, check that. I am James Anthony on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, on Twitter, on Clubhouse, and Cash App, and any other app you want to find me on. But I am James Anthony across all social media. I am James Anthony across all social media platforms. And when you're on all of those platforms, a link to my website is across them all as well. So that shouldn't be an issue. But that's where you can find me.
Fantastic, man. Well, we'll leave it right there. Thank you. I appreciate your time today, man. And keep doing what you're doing. I'm watching from afar, clapping in the background. So keep going.
I appreciate you, man.
This is TWiP.